Have you found it? Woo! Well, I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited. We are literally one step closer to
I
having
know.
a happy life.
Yes.
I am your kind of host, Don Long, best-selling author, founder of Grown and Rich. And today, man, this is one of the first of a series of conversations and talks about a happy life. How to find you and love without compromise. With the, I guess at this point, two-time author. Is that right? Two-time,
I love
two-time,
her.
two-time, two-time
Like,
author Marquise Holyfield. So without any further ado, thank you for tuning in. This is, like I said, going to be one of the first ones of many. The book's coming out very soon. So we're going to kind of talk about the book and why the book is important and why
yes,
you need to have it on your coffee table, in your book bag, and two copies to give to your friends.
yes, exactly. Two times good friends.
Two copies to give to your friends because friends love to give gifts. So if you are a real friend, then you should be giving the gift of the happy life.
Yes, indeed. Good
So now
afternoon.
let's talk to the author. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are y'all? How you doing?
I'm good. I got not a complaint in the world. Here you've been working really hard.
Yes, I've been working hard. So my new project is Happy Life, finding yourself and love without compromise. And this was a labor of love in in so many ways because if you all reminded that the first book was Dating versus Hooking Up, why was it important to date? A journey, a journal and a journey. And so
Okay.
that book was all really about reflection and who you are and what are you looking for, and just seeing a collection of stories of other people as they talk about their dating experience, trying to figure out like how do we navigate this dating world out here this day. And then the new book is all about you really focusing and honing on you and understanding what are the tools you need to be able to have the happy life. So we really focus on, the book has 4 chapters and we focus on loneliness, which really understanding that.
Well, wait. Well, hold. Before we get into that, let's take a step back. Okay. First of all, where can you get the first book at?
First book, you can find it on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon.com and put in Dating versus Hooking Up, you can find the first book. It is on sale for $14.99. So we definitely want you to support and get the first book to kind of start your journey, to kick yourself off. And
Okay.
then say the sequel to this, to the next one is Happy Life, finding yourself without love and compromise.
Okay. So it sounds like there were some things that you kind of discovered after the first book, because obviously dating and hooking up is a lot different than finding love. So how do we shift from? I mean, just in general, for you per se, how did you shift from just talking about people and their dating experiences to actually then moving into a space where people are actually in a relationship?
Okay. Well, first, it started off when we really think about the first one, it really was me reflecting and thinking about what it is that I wanted and what I,
Okay.
and then talking to a collection of friends and also other women and young men that were in my age bracket. So we talking about the over 30 bracket, 30 and up bracket,
Okay.
and
Grown
really
folks.
finding out the real grown folks, really finding out like what their struggles was real in relationships, because when it started with the dating process for dating versus hooking up, it was just like, well, what is dating? I know for me, I had been married for 25 years, got divorced, and then got back in the dating game, and I was just like, say what? What is going
So it sounds like these books are kind of autobiographical in a way. Things that you were experiencing, things that you were talking about with your friends, things that you were seeing in the community, things that you were seeing in the workplace. Because everywhere we are, we're always talking about these men and these women.
That's true. So
Okay.
they kind of are a little bit of autobiography. So there are some pieces where I tell my story and what I've learned, but then I also pull in some of my friends and strangers and so forth, and kind of ask their opinions and thoughts on different questions. One of the things you'll learn about me is I'm a reflective, and so what that
Okay.
means is that I'm always going to cause you to think. So there's going to be questions that the reader will ponder throughout to think about for themselves and what it is that you need, and kind of jumpstart you to really think about stuff. I remember when we started to do Happy Life, I sent out the questionnaire to over 100 people to have them fill it out, and there was questions about around like, what is vulnerability? Tell me about a time where you were lonely. Tell me about a time where fear stopped you from being in a healthy relationship. Tell me about a time when you didn't trust, and what did that look like? And it was funny because some people answered, there's 8 questions total. Some people only answered 7. Some people only answered 5, because some questions they was like, man, these are good questions. They
So okay. So one of the staples of your books is obviously forcing people to really take a step back and look at what's going on in a more reflective way to see what they can detect for themselves in regard to patterns, both in the way that they think and the way that they speak, so that they can then start to have these epiphanies, so to speak. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I see where I'm going wrong. And then to then walk them and usher them through um, making actual changes.
Exactly. So one of the things that the books really will do is have you to have that epiphany moment and really make you think about like, oh man, okay, I didn't think about this. So when we talk about the loneliness phase in the book, we really focus on what are the things that make us lonely. A lot of times people think that loneliness has to do with the fact that you are not in a relationship, but we also talk about loneliness as situational. We talk about loneliness as where you are in your life, where you need to grow and develop, and then where you are spiritually as well. And a lot of times, people are like, "What, Marquise? What does one have to do with the other?" But when we talk about
Well,
it,
that's a good place for us to go. So obviously there was a shift for you from dating to then being in a relationship, because it sounds like you kind of go through the stuff, like your process is okay, here's what I go through, then I write about what I went through. So now it feels like maybe you're in a happy space in your own life.
I am in a happy place in my own life, and I can attest that every one of the chapters that we talk about, from the first book, Dating versus Hooking Up, to the process of learning how to date and what is dating and what I conceived myself to dating to be, was
Mhm.
through experiences of what I liked and what I didn't like. And I was like, what I wasn't going to deal with. So, what were my deal breakers? To getting into, when we think about happy life, to really focusing on, okay, I had to have my alone isolation period being in what I call preparation season. Everybody needs to have that moment to really figure out who you are. Because what
Mhm.
I talked about in the first book, which came really big in the second book, was I developed in the first book that I had a lot of settling that I did, a lot of insecurities. And then when the second book came out, those insecurities really started to shine. So when we
Mhm.
start to talk about the loneliness period, I talked about some of the stupid things. Where I talked about loneliness and make you do stupid things.
Yeah.
And so, one of the quotes in the book is, loneliness will make you do stupid things. It'll make you, date your
Make
ex-husband,
you do wrong.
make you do all kind of stuff. So it's like I said, make you date your ex-husband 2 years after the divorce, knowing that you spent a whole lot of money to get away from them and realize they really wasn't what you want. You were using them as an emotional crutch because you didn't want to be alone. And so really talking with other people who talked about all the things that they've done in the loneliness period to help them to realize, oh, these were dumb decisions. But where did it come from? It was situational pieces, and then there was a place of growth, because the situational piece is everybody else had a boo thing, and I was sitting up here by myself in the house, and I was kind of a little envious and a little jealous of folks because people was out there doing their thing, and I was at home chilling. And so, of course, we have this need for companionship and wanting companionship. So
Yeah.
I was like, "Ooh, let's try some stuff." But only to realize and understand, as I reflect and went through these different situational periods of loneliness, that there were some insecurities there. There were some things that I needed to work on, of having to be content with who Marquise was, being content in loving myself and being okay, and realizing I had to get to the point where I realized that I'm the prize. And that's one of the things that I want everybody who reads that first chapter to really understand, that you are the prize. Now, what are the things
So
you need to do to prepare yourself? to be able to be that prize and value yourself in that way.
So let's unpack some of that. So because we just had a nice little bit here. So let's unpack some of the things you just talked about. So the first thing is, you know, obviously there are a lot of people who desire companionship, and in their need for companionship, sometimes they repeat things
Yes.
that
Or go
didn't
back to
always give them the best results before.
yes.
So obviously, people, they're home, they're bored, they go back to places in their mind, they go back to places in their life and people in their lives that they maybe shouldn't have been around, just because they haven't figured out how to build a bridge to a new life.
Exactly. We circle back. We call it the circle back.
Spin the block.
The block a couple times, or you realize when you're ready for a fresh and new thing, that person that you haven't dated and talked to in 10, 15 years, all of a sudden decides he wants to circle back. He'd be like, why are you circling the block back? What is that piece of understanding that we get to this place of being afraid, and we get to the place of comfortability? It is comfortable to be with the person that we already know what they issues are. We already know how they're going to react, instead of trying to take what I call the leap of faith to get ready to go into that new thing.
Okay. So sounds like we're talking about at least three different things here. Number one, we're talking about creating some new habits and forming some new bonds and new relationships. Two, closing some old doors. And three, just a better understanding of why people are circling back to you.
Exactly.
Because obviously, and you saying that you're the prize, the Lou Rawls song about you never find.
Exactly.
And what, my experience is, and this is just, me giving my 2 cents, having read some of the book myself. My experience with people in general is people circle the block when they don't have better options, not because they want you back.
Yeah, and that's true. And I think that's the key that we have to be able to understand. And then we have to understand. So that's why people circle the block. And then we got to ask ourselves why we circling the block as well. And 9 times out of 10 is you don't have other options. The option that you want, and the example I give in the book is the option that I wanted at the time wasn't the right option. It wasn't working out. It wasn't available to me. So I went back to the comfortability of what I already knew, even though I knew that comfortability wasn't it.
And one of the things, just to kind of piggyback off that, is God's closing doors and we're kicking them open.
All the time. And I think that's important, because one of the things that we talk about when we talk about happy life is having that foundational relationship with God, when you understand who you are and understand who he is and where he has brought you to. And I think that's key and pivotal. And I say this all the time. People gonna be like, well, Marquise, what does God have to do with me finding myself and being in this happy relationship? He has everything to do with it.
Well, I give you a few examples. One, we look at Lot's wife.
Yep.
She longed for a life that was behind her, not the one that was in front of her.
And missed out on everything and died right there in the pillar of salt.
Exactly. Same thing when you look, at the children of Israel. When they were leaving. So now you cross the Red Sea and you get out of slavery and you get out of this bad situation, and you're like, man, we had it better over there, because now you're in this land between two lands, which we might be able to say is the loneliness, the boredom, and you're looking for connection. So now you start doing the things that you used to do because you want to be connected to somebody. But unfortunately, the people you want to be connected to are the people that God delivered you from.
Exactly. He trying to close the door and you keep trying to bust it right back wide open. And then you find yourself in this place where you feel stuck, almost in this place of, you find yourself isolated, and people
Mm.
get in a place of isolation, and they either do one of two things. They do the stupid stuff where they keep doing the comfortability thing, or they really start to hanker down and take the isolation period and use it as a moment of reflection, restoration, healing, and direction.
Exactly. Which is why the questions are so important. So for people at home, if you are in a situation where you're like, man, I know God is calling me to something great. I know God is calling me to something new. And in order to get there, I'm gonna have to develop some new habits. This is probably the book that you need to spend the whole summer with.
Yes.
Figuring out like, okay, how do I make a strategic withdrawal from these negative, toxic relationships? How do I remove myself from people who don't see me the way God sees me and don't wish for me the thing that God wants me to have?
Exactly.
Because a lot of times what we're seeing in relationships, especially, is that people have different agendas. Like I
Yeah.
don't like to say one person's outgrowing another because we all growing, we just ain't growing in the same direction.
Right. And then we
The Bible says, "How could two walk together unless they be agreed?"
also got to remember too, in this place, you'll find yourself being either you are place holding someone or either you are the placeholder. And I think it's important for us to realize that in this moment, how not to be either one.
But that's only because both of you are standing in the wrong place.
Exactly.
Because if they were moving, they couldn't carry a placeholder because they'd be moving too fast. And if you were moving, you couldn't be a placeholder because you wouldn't be standing somewhere long enough for them to make you one.
Exactly. So
So
it's
a lot
key.
of this is just avoiding your purpose in general. But this is, you got to build a foundation and develop some new habits somewhere so that you can get to a happy life.
Yes, exactly. And so I think one of the things that we need to focus on and realize is what I would say as you start to read this book, embrace the reflection, embrace the pause. So as Ladon talks about, this is the book for the summer to read. This is not, even though it's not a very long book, we're talking about 70 pages. It's an easy read, quick read, but I want you to take the time and reflect.
Because it's meant to be applied, right?
Right, this is meant to be applied. So it's one of those things where you're going to read, take notes, and then apply what it is that you've learned. Because there's steps in the book that talks about, okay, step one, this is what I need to really focus on here. And how do I do those things?
And speaking of steps and applying, okay, the way you're setting this particular situation up this time, as opposed to the first book, is that you're literally actually going to be working with women,
Yes.
you
Super
know,
excited about that. So,
and one-on-ones and in small groups so that they have a place to go during the lonely period so that they don't go back. Almost kind of like, when people go into AA and they have a sponsor, or they have a mentor, someone that they can call when they want to take a drink, someone that they can call when they want to go and do some foolishness. you
so
know.
yes, this September, fall 2024, we will do a class. We will do an 8-week class when we will focus on the first 4 weeks is what we call the cocoon phase. We will definitely just focus on really building you up. How do you go through this period of learning yourself, being reassured, building a sense of confidence, putting the things into practice. And
So as we start to get into cuffing season,
yes, as we started getting cuffing season,
when
we're
people are
being
making these
prepared.
bad choices, you're going to be there to be their support system and accountability partner, and a guide.
Yes, to help them through the whole process. So then as we get by the time we get out of cuffing season, you'll be whole, healed, and ready to be able to move forward into your new beginning. As the word of God says,
And
all
that's
passed away.
let's talk about that because again, we went from the dating to the happy life,
Yeah.
you know, and you seem to be very happy.
Well, I have to admit, I have gone through this process. So when we talk about it being personal and autobiography, like I've gone through the dating versus hooking up pieces and the trials and woes with the dating piece of like, oh God, what is going on? And the isolation piece to get me ready for the happy life. And so, it's taking some time. I'm in that place now. I'm in a serious relationship and it's going very, very well. And I'm in that place of happiness and joy and expectation. And I had to go through these phases that's in happy life to get to the happy life. And so you will hear me talk about the fears and some of the hardest pieces and choices that we have to make and go through. And I talk about this is a process. So I'm just want to just put it out here. If anybody is thinking that it's gonna be like overnight, boom, I'm gonna read this book, and after I read this book, I'm gonna be ready to go. No, you're gonna read, apply, process, then you're gonna be ready to go. Which is why we are having the class that will start in the fall to kind of help you with some of those things, because you're going to have revelation knowledge, you're going to have discernment, you're going to have all these different epiphany moments that are great. But so when you have the epiphany moment, we're going to teach you how to apply it and utilize it through the pieces as you're starting to get to the happy life.
Well, let's stick right there in some of these revelations, because like you say, you're going to reach a point, because I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, we were in slavery, then we were between the promised land and slavery, and that's kind of where most of us are when we're trying to get to our happy life.
Mhm.
We come out of bad relationships, and now we have to get away from those bad relationships. Then we got to take a minute to get it all off us, and realize that we're not there anymore. We need to stop sacrificing calves and dance naked.
Right. We got to stop, building on those transactional relationships and feel like we need to be out here twerking and swiping left and swiping right and doing whatever it is that everybody else doing.
And not that we're
We get to-
judging you for any of
Right.
that, because let's be clear,
To
you
each
got
other,
to have some fun somewhere. But at
but
the
you got
same time, we have way too many people, and that's a good segue. I
Mhm.
think we have way too many people who don't want to be twerking, and who don't want to be thotting, who don't want to be hookahing and showing all the body parts on the internet, who are doing it because they think that's how they're going to find their love. You know, I know a lot of people who have no desire to go to the club, whatever, but then they there with their homegirl and they carrying all the purses and they the designated driver, and they don't want to be in the club. So then when you meet a guy in the club,
Love results.
but you weren't supposed to be there in the first place,
Exactly.
but you're going because that's the only life you know.
Exactly.
So now you're meeting people that you're not compatible with, and you're having these horrible experiences because you're meeting people in places that you never should have met them in the first place.
Mhm.
You know, so when we start talking about the actions of some of our peers, we're not talking about them from a negative standpoint. We're literally just talking to the people who in the pit of your belly, this ain't you.
Right.
When you taking that picture and you don't feel good about it, but you taking it anyway, or when you stand there with your girls and they all turn around, put their hand on their hip and stick their butt out, that you don't really want to do that, but you went on and did it. And then now you attract something or someone that is not of God and what God sent you. It's like, man, how am I supposed to make this work?
Right. And you don't. And we talk about that in the book. There's a whole chapter where we focus on intimacy and where we talk about the different types of intimacy. I say this in the book all the time, that everyone immediately think of intimacy, everybody thinks about the physical intimacy. They think about having sex. And though that's part of intimacy, is not the key component. And so when we start to really talk about that, we really start to break down what are the other pieces of intimacy and why those are important. As I would say, more important, the physical piece is the enhancement. The other pieces is what helps to maintain it.
Well, the wise man told me one time that intimacy was see into me.
It is.
You know, see into me.
And if you
Me
only have the
seeing
physical
into you.
pieces, right. And if you only have the physical pieces of intimacy, what are they seeing into?
You know. And with that being said, again, you have to, to take a page out of your book, you have to heal some of these things that are going on in your life, so that when a person does start to be in relationship with you, that they feel safe allowing you to see into them.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
speaking from a male standpoint, it is very difficult to allow certain women to see into you because you feel like they're going to weaponize it and use it against you.
Right. And then also you want to make sure that they're there for the right reasons. We hear a lot of men talking about, are you seeing into my wallet? Because you never got to see into me. So of course you got the physical attraction of the person. Everybody starts with that at first, because you have to have some type of physical piece, chemistry that draws you into the person. And then so that's A. And then B, then it becomes, girl, he a doctor, or he a attorney, or he got his own business and he make this money, he drive this car, he do this, and he took me this restaurant and he do this. You've only talked about all the assets of him and not the essence of who he is as an
Well,
individual.
but here's the thing with that, and just, again, for people at home, we're not bashing. It's just the truth.
Right.
If you're bragging on somebody else, it's typically because you have nothing to brag about. So if all of your accolades and accomplishments are attached to she, he, them, they, my boys, my mama, my boyfriend, then you really need to, go back and take that first chapter and really break it down and look at yourself more clearly and say, okay, well, what am I doing? What have I accomplished? Because a lot of times God's really just waiting on you to get it together to move you into the place that you're supposed to be so that then you can meet the other person. So if you're not ready emotionally, you're not ready financially, you're not ready physically, then you're only going to attract what you are, and you're only going to meet people where you are.
Exactly.
But if that's not where you're supposed to be,
Then don't be surprised if you don't find the right one.
your husband could be right on the other side of healing.
Exactly.
Which it sounds like Happy Life is really depicting, that
It
hey,
is. It
I
really
was here, I made some changes, I made some adjustments, I made some tweaks, which then put me in a position to hear both what the men were saying and what God was saying. Because it's one thing to hear what God's saying, but if you don't hear what the man is saying,
that part.
now you don't know that this is the one.
Exactly. And then also, because we also talk a little bit about the trust factor. So that's piece in there where we talk a chapter in there all about building trust, and with that building trust and talking about how not to self sabotage.
Mm-hmm.
So, because this is that piece where you can have the one in front of you, the woman one, the man one, and you've let the things that you have not allowed yourself to heal from your past, your insecurities, your abandonment issues, how their last few relationships happen to self-sabotage what's going in, or you're overthinking. You are overthinking everything and not allowing it to be. I tell people in this book, and just key for people to remember is that you have to allow this to happen naturally. If you're forcing it, then it's not the right thing. So you need to take the time and allow it time for it to build and for it to grow. Think about it as a plant, or let's say a cake. When you get ready to bake that cake, you don't just put in the eggs and then put the eggs in the oven and say, okay, I want a cake. No, you have to put in your eggs, your flour, your sugar, sometimes your flavoring, and whatever other ingredients that you have to make this said cake. And then you actually have to mix it all together and then put it in the oven. And then you have to wait a certain amount of time before that cake is ready. Because if you take it out before it's ready, you got a half done cake. Do you want a half done man or a half done woman? Or do you want to be that half done man, a half done woman?
Well, let's take it a step further. I know one of the things in God wants you to dominate, still available on Amazon, by the way, that I talk about Bruce Wayne and how after his parents died, they left him everything, but he was a child. So he couldn't have everything because he was a child. And then they gave him Alfred. So
Yep.
Alfred was the caretaker of all things that belonged to Bruce Wayne. Okay. And when Bruce Wayne was old enough, then all things that were his became his. So that's kind of the thing you have to look at right now. It's like, okay, God has something for you. But are you going to be baby Bruce Wayne, or are you going to grow into the person that ultimately becomes Batman?
Exactly. And we talk about, do you have that foundational relationship? So you will learn in this book that we talk about how God is preparing you to love. He's teaching you to love yourself first before you can love someone else. He's teaching you how to trust. He's teaching you how to be vulnerable. He's teaching you to develop intimacy. Once you start to develop those pieces, those skill building moments, those character building moments with God, you are now ready to build those moments with
with
another.
somebody else.
Mhm.
So again, you got to be able to trust yourself, because a lot of people, and we see this a lot as men. We see women that because men are watching women trying to figure out if she could be one.
Mhm.
But if we can't trust her in a room of men, because she get in a room of men and all of a sudden she just want all the attention, she probably ain't gonna be the one. Because in those type of situations, you like, ooh, girl, he fine. Ooh, girl, he fine too. Ooh, girl, he fine too. And now you giving all of them your phone number, you talking to all of them, and
And you've
the
missed,
one that really want to be with you is like, can't trust her.
yeah, it's what we would say, community booty. And I use that term loosely. It does not mean that you are in an intimate way with everyone, but what it does mean is that you are ready to give your attention to anyone. You putting your horse in every race
Well,
instead of.
it's divided energy.
Mhm.
If we're trying to build something, or if I'm considering you as someone I want to build something with, the last thing I want is to see you serving other men,
Exactly.
you know, hearing from other men, giving too much attention to other men. And the story goes the same way. I mean, you know how women are with the best female best friend. It ain't that they don't want you to have a female best friend. It's just that they don't want you to have a female best friend who has more votes, more delegates than they do.
Exactly.
I said it was A. Your female friend said it was B. Now you walk around here talking about it's B,
Right.
but you're in a relationship with me.
That part.
So again, you have to figure out how to navigate within yourself the things that you're doing.
Hmm.
Which is why the reflection part of your book is so important, because a lot of these things you're doing, and I'm speaking as a man, are running men off.
Exactly. And like one of the things I give this example um of, like, ladies, when you get to the place where you're building trust, if he's trust you enough to make you a safe place, and he's told you some intimate piece about him that everybody don't know, and the minute y'all get in an argument, you throw that back in his face. So if he's shared something about his family history, and then you go back and say, well, that's why your mama and daddy wasn't never married in the first place. Those things immediately separates you
Well,
in the relationship.
right, because now I can't trust you. But I'm gonna take it one step further. The majority of men, their number one love language is words of affirmation. So if a man's love language is words of affirmation, compliments, saying that you're proud of him, saying that you appreciate him, talking to him and talking to his higher self, quote unquote, as some people say, talking to the king in him, is what makes him move in a way that is beneficial to you, and you can't get out of your own way long enough to do it. So if I told him he looked nice today, he would go to work working even harder for us.
Yep.
But instead of saying that, you say, "Oh, you think you cute."
Right.
Yeah. So now these little small jabs, you know, he's starting a business, and you say, "Well, how's your little business doing?"
You can't do that. You can't do that. That's a surefire way to run him away. And that's why it's one of the pieces where we also talk about in the book that when you're in the courting phase, when you're in the dating phase to getting to the happy life. So we've gone through the process and we start to get to the courting phase. We talk about key and important is spend more time talking than you do going out. And I say, I know I'm gonna get shot up from the ladies going, what you mean we should go on the first date? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying take the time before you hit the actual, he took me to wherever, to get to know each
Well,
other.
here's a question I got, and maybe you can answer this, maybe whoever watches this could leave it in the comments later. Why are you so concerned about the first date as though it's the only date?
Well, because you know what? Sometimes I think and I can tell from me from experience, when you haven't dated in a while and you get the first date, you're so excited. You like you on 30. It's like, oh my God, yes, I got a date. And then it's like, and he a good guy, like, ooh. And then if the date goes well, you get even more excited and you're excited about the possibilities. And this is why I say understand that when you get to the possibilities, we get super excited and we get excited about where he's taking us and where we're going. And girl, I gotta get that outfit, I get my hair done and nails done and have to look fabulous, that we're forgetting about why we're dating in the first place. So the essence of the fun and the joy of dating is great, but don't forget it's about the conversation, because part of the conversation is what helps to determine on both ends. As they say, remember when they say you're on a job interview, you interviewing too? Did they see
Yeah.
you want to work there? It's the same thing in a relationship. Y'all both interviewing each other because you may get the first date or the second date. But the key factor of it is you need to have conversations with him or her to decide if there's
If
going
we
to
should
be,
be dating.
if we should be more than just 2 or 3 dates. But if you so focused,
Pause. Stop. We're gonna stop the whole interview. If you are not fun to be around, you're not gonna get 3 dates.
true.
You did not purchase a 3-date package. You know, if you spend all of it, and this is a man talking, if you spent all of this time worried about you, then when we go on a date, you have no concern for me. Why would I then want to take you out again?
And then you also want to get to the piece where we talk about, when we talk about in that intimacy level, we talk about that mental and emotional intimacy, where it's getting to know each other on an intellectual level. Because this is the thing, and I'm gonna tell y'all straightforward, ladies. I've heard this from men countless times. Yes, they like the ladies that are successful and you got your own and you're independent. They like that piece. That part is attractive. However, you need to have some substance. And what I mean by substance is if you are on a date with someone and they're talking to you, you need to talk more about than what the degree you got, the house you got, the blast trip you went on, all your things. And he too can't be talking about a list. You all have to be able to say, if it's politics that's interesting to you, have a political conversation. Do you have a financial management conversation? Do you have to find out what's going on in the world? Sports conversation. You have to bring some substance to the table, not just your accolades to the table.
Let me be clear. And again, this is me speaking as a man. I'm going rogue on the interview, by the way.
He is.
I'm going rogue. Yes, I am. Good people like to be around good people. Fun people, easy to talk to people, easy to get to know people, people that are a joy to be around. Nobody enjoys somebody who ignores them and talks about themselves all night. Nobody enjoys somebody telling you all of their problems. Nobody enjoys somebody who is just out here complaining about everything. Yeah. And again, there are women who should be married right now, but they refuse to make the small little adjustments in the way that they do dating, in the way that, quote unquote, they do business. Because he's attracted to the physical. He's made the decision that, hey, you're somebody that I could see myself with, and I'm willing to invest my time, energy, and money in you. But I don't like the way you talk to me.
Yeah. And then the other piece of it is ladies, I say ladies because I see this more with ladies happening. Please don't be on the date saying, well, there's no good men out here.
As you sit across from a man.
Right. Because he's now questioning, well, what do you think of me? So
Well,
I say those things, and I know some of us, that's why we talk about that lonely phase, that preparation phase, because it helps you to heal from what we call the bitterness of the past.
you got to
Uh,
break bad habits.
Right. You got to break the bad habits. You really have to be able to break the bad habits. And that's why I say if you start the dating process, the courting process with the let's go for a cup of coffee, let's talk on the phone, let's go for a walk, simple first dates
Yeah.
before you go to the let's go eat at the fancy restaurant type of deal, you get to know each other because then you're forced to be in a situation where you have to talk, where you
And
have to
determine if we should go on a date.
exactly, because sometimes you're gonna have the person that's attracted to you and you attracted to them, and then they open their mouth and start talking, and they talking foolishness, whether it's male or female, and you be like, "No, thank you." So why would you want to waste, your time where you can do the courting phase over the phone, go on a couple coffee dates or tea dates or whatever it is that you like, go for some ice cream, just small ways to adjust to say, oh, okay. I like what he's talking about. Okay, I got some interest here. This is something that I
It
could do.
seems like we have some chemistry. It seems like we're on the same page. It seems like we have similar outlook
Go.
on life.
Mhm. And
I'm not trying to date up.
exactly. And then you start to realize what we talk about also in the book that, that equally yoked, that alignment piece. Are you in line with each other? Because that's the other thing that when we're in this dating process, we realize seeking a happy life, we always sometimes try to, again, get, and I talk about this, uh, those who are looking at this and will tell me later in the comments, like some of you all find that if you find that you always find the same person over and over again, and you don't know why you keep attracting the same type of person, male or female.
Because you keep
You're like,
spending the
what's wrong?
same block.
It's because you haven't healed from the things, you haven't taken that step back to reflect. And then you also have to do that piece of really listening, understanding. Because I want us to think about, I talk about the lessons that I learned from the past relationships that helped me to be in this happy life relationship that I am in now. I learned some things that I had to shut up, Marquise, and let him talk.
Right.
I had to be open to try new things and bring new things to me and say if I like them, if I don't like them. And then
Absolutely.
I had to be able to really think about like, well, how do I talk? How do I come to the table? How am I treating other people? How is he treating other people? Can we laugh?
Develop a new habit. New sounds like we're developing some new habits, some better
Right,
habits,
the new and
more
better.
effective habits.
And those are in the healthier habits. And you
Right.
realize that some of the habits you had before were toxic, and I say this as we get ready to wrap up the interview, but I remember the first time we had a fight. The first time we had a fight, I
Mm.
remember telling him, I don't want to fight dirty. I want to fight clean. And what that means is, and we'll talk more about this if you sign up for the class, is really talking about helping you to understand is, do you attack the person? Because that's fighting dirty. Fighting clean is having that moment of listening and not trying to be right, but trying to compromise and understand together.
And do you realize the other person isn't attacking you?
Hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot of times, we feel, quote unquote, misrecognized, and then we fire back. And if I feel like you're attacking me, now all of a sudden, I unleash the bombs, and the other person's like, well, all I said was, and now you keep repeating these cycles and you end up only with people who can tolerate your toxicity.
Right. And then you don't even realize you being toxic. You just saying, well, I'm just telling them like it is because ain't nobody gonna disrespect me. And that goes both ways. And I think we have to understand what's the level of people trying to be able to help us to see a different perspective. And we accept the different perspective and understand that our different perspectives may not always agree and align, but how do we meet in the middle with those two different perspectives?
Right. And a lot of this stuff is just such a common occurrence.
Mhm.
So again, this book is something, that's going to help prepare you for what God has in store for you. Because one thing that I've been saying over and over and over to anybody who'll hear me is that marriages are going to make a comeback.
They are.
So when they come back, just like Jesus, will you be ready?
Yes. And Happy Life, finding yourself without compromise is going to help you to be ready.
Exactly. So, with that being said, it has been a wonderful time. Um, Again, I'm your kind of co-host, best-selling author Sadon Long. And before we go, how do people find you? You got some stuff going on. What you
Yeah.
got coming up?
Okay. What I got coming up? So, people can find me. My email address is by Marquise 2021 at gmail.com. You can always email me.
Right.
Also, Happy Life podcast will be up on YouTube, so you'll be able to find us there. So just put
And
in
on Spotify.
Spotify. So you'll be able to find us in both places. And of course, we will be doing our book launch. Happy Life will come out on July 7th, and we will do a book launch on July 13th. So we'll invite people out to come and have conversations. So it's opportunity to get the book and discuss with all of us and kind of learn more. And then of course, like I said, in fall and September of 2024, we will start our class.
So
So
you can get so you can get cuffed and not handcuffed.
yeah, exactly. And be ready to start your process to your happy life.
Because we are really moving toward a time when people are going to start really needing each other again. I mean, the way inflation is, and the way the housing market is, and employment and things of that nature. We're getting back to a time that our grandparents and great grandparents were in some cases, where you needed each other.
And
That woman needed that man, and that man needed that woman, and that's what God intended, for them both to be interdependent. So, not codependent, but interdependent. Like we're the three um braided band.
yes.
Y'all know what I'm at home. If y'all don't, ask your pastors.
Exactly. Or
Right.
three chord tied together.
Right.
What he's talking about. But yes, we are definitely moving into that season. We can see with the different things that's happening in our society. It's not just for those pieces that Saddam talked about, but we also talked about the spiritual growth, and we also are really talking about the mental, emotional stability as well. And then, of course, helping developing that happy, healthy, godly family as well.
Exactly. So that we can all flourish, going forward. So this has been our time. This is episode 1. Like I said, stay tuned, because there are more episodes on the way, and we're going to be talking to some really impactful, wonderful women, and they're going to be sharing their opinions. Because I'm just a guy. So the women are going to take over from here going forward, and maybe some men will figure out a way to make our way back in here a couple times and give our little nugget when we get one. But man, stay tuned, because there's some really good stuff happening.
Yep, exactly. Thank you again for joining us for Happy Life. We look forward to seeing you very
And
soon.
don't forget about the radio show.
And yes, don't forget the radio show. I do a weekly radio show. It's called A Real Inspiration Radio, where we talk about happy life relationship issues all the time. What it means to be a man, a woman, or God in relationship, and how to develop healthy, godly relationships, and what that actually looks like in this season, and how to date in this season in this healthy, godly way, and not take on the things of the world, but be in the world and not of the world.